A few months ago, somebody emailed me a story that honestly sounded fake at first. Not fake in the way internet horror stories usually do, where there's some abandoned hospital or demonic cult involved. Actually, the opposite. The details were so normal that it felt believable in a way I didn't really like. The guy said his name was Daniel. He was 29 and had been driving rideshare full-time in Phoenix during 2021 after getting laid off from a warehouse job during COVID. According to him, most of the story happened during a stretch where he was only driving nights because airport pickups paid better. And before I start, I'll say this. I looked into a few of the details he mentioned. The roads exist. The gas station exists. The accident he mentioned later actually happened. I'm not saying the story is real, but I also couldn't explain some of the things he sent screenshots of. This is basically his story exactly how he told it to me. Daniel said nighttime airport driving was usually boring. Most passengers were exhausted travelers who barely talked. The good thing was fewer cars on the road and longer trips. He normally worked from around 8 p.m. until sunrise. The night this happened was a Thursday in November. He remembered because the weather was unusually cold for Arizona. Not freezing, but cold enough that people were actually wearing jackets. Around 30:30 in the morning, he had just dropped somebody off near downtown Phoenix after an airport run. At that hour, the city apparently felt strange. Not empty exactly, just hollow. Traffic lights changing for nobody, office buildings completely dark. The occasional homeless person crossing empty intersections. Daniel said he was already thinking about heading home because the app had gone quiet for almost 20 minutes. Then a request appeared. Pickup location, East Monroe Street. The profile name only showed a single letter. M. No rating. Which was unusual. He almost declined it because new accounts late at night sometimes meant trouble. Drunk people, fake rides, people trying to squeeze too many passengers into one car. But the pickup was only 4 minutes away. So he accepted. He described the area as mostly empty office buildings with one small parking garage and a closed coffee shop. When he turned onto the street, he immediately saw somebody standing at the curb, a man wearing a gray hoodie, hands in pockets, standing completely still beneath a streetlight. Daniel's first thought was that the guy had been watching for his car because he stepped forward almost immediately. The man opened the rear passenger door and got in. No greeting. No, how's it going? Nothing. Daniel said that wasn't too unusual, though. A lot of late-night passengers just wanted silence. He asked for the destination. The man spoke quietly. North Ashbury Lane. Daniel recognized the area, a suburban neighborhood around 20 minutes away. He waited for the app to load the route. Nothing happened. No navigation line appeared. At first, he thought the signal had frozen. He refreshed the app while sitting at the curb. Still nothing. The trip wasn't showing as started. That happened sometimes if cell service lagged. So he manually entered the address into Google Maps instead and pulled away. The entire time, the passenger sat silently behind him. Daniel tried making small talk once. Long night? No answer. A few seconds later, the man quietly said, something like that. Daniel said the voice bothered him immediately, not because it sounded creepy, because it sounded tired, like somebody who hadn't slept in days. The streets were almost completely empty. Daniel remembered passing through several intersections without seeing another vehicle at all. At one point, he looked at the clock. 30:47 a.m. The passenger still hadn't moved. Most people checked their phones or looked out the windows. This guy just sat there. Daniel said he became aware of how quiet the car was. No music, no traffic, no phone sounds, just the tires on the road. Then he noticed something else. The app still wasn't showing an active trip. Usually, even if navigation failed, there'd still be passenger info visible. But now the screen looked normal. Like he wasn't driving anyone at all. No passenger icon. No trip timer. No estimated fare. Nothing. Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. The passenger was staring directly at him. Not angry. Not threatening. Just watching. Daniel looked back at the road immediately. A few seconds later, he laughed nervously and said, "Sorry, app's acting weird tonight." The passenger didn't respond. Another few minutes passed. Daniel started feeling increasingly uncomfortable. He said the weirdest part wasn't even the passenger. It was the roads. Everything felt dead. Gas stations empty. No headlights anywhere behind them. Traffic lights cycling pointlessly. He described it like driving through a city after everybody had quietly left. Then he realized something that made his stomach drop. They had gone nearly 10 minutes without seeing another car. In Phoenix, even at almost 4 in the morning, that didn't happen. Daniel finally decided to stop somewhere public and restart his phone. He pulled into a brightly lit gas station near Camelback Road. The station itself looked open. Lights on, coffee machines running. But no cars at the pumps, no customers inside. Daniel parked beside the building. "Sorry, man, give me 1 second. My app's freezing." The passenger said nothing. Daniel stepped out carrying his phone. The second he shut the driver door, he said the silence hit him. No traffic noise. No distant engines. Nothing. Just the low electrical hum from the gas station lights. He opened the rideshare app again. No active ride. No record of a pickup. He checked his trip history. His last completed ride was still the airport passenger from downtown. The request from M wasn't there. Not canceled. Not glitched. Gone. Daniel said he started convincing himself the passenger had somehow entered the wrong car. Maybe he wasn't connected to the app at all. Still strange, but explainable. Then he remembered something. The man had known Daniel's name. When he first got into the car, before saying the destination, he had quietly said, "Daniel?" like he was confirming the driver. Daniel turned slowly toward the back seat. Empty. Nobody there. He stared for several seconds. Then he noticed the rear passenger side door moving slightly. Not opening. Swinging. As if it had just been shut. Daniel immediately checked around the gas station. Nobody walking away. Nobody near the building. Nobody crossing the road. Nothing. And, according to him, this is the moment the fear actually hit. Not movie fear. Not panic. That deep physical feeling that something is wrong in a way your brain can't organize. He got back into the car and locked the doors. Then he drove straight home. Around sunrise, after sleeping maybe 2 hours, Daniel started convincing himself he'd imagined parts of it. Sleep deprivation. Stress. A weird passenger who slipped out while he was distracted. But one thing still bothered him, the complete lack of ride history. He contacted rideshare support. They told him no trip request had ever been sent to his account from that location. Daniel even sent screenshots of his phone battery usage because he had taken one at the gas station while trying to troubleshoot. The support agent supposedly repeated, "There was no passenger assigned to you at that time." That should have been the end of it. Except 3 nights later, something else happened. Daniel was driving again around 2 a.m. He stopped at a red light near the same district where he had picked up the man, and standing on the corner was the gray hoodie. Same posture, hands in pockets. Watching traffic. Daniel said the second he recognized him, he felt cold. The light changed. He drove through the intersection. Then looked back. The man was gone. No crossing the street. No walking away. Gone. Daniel avoided that area for weeks afterward. Then around December, he saw a local news article shared online. Hit and run victim identified after fatal collision downtown. The article included blurry traffic camera images. One image showed the victim shortly before the accident. Gray hoodie. Daniel froze when he saw it. He said it was absolutely the same man. According to the article, the victim had been killed just after 30:30 a.m. The same night Daniel picked him up. The location of the collision was less than a block from the pickup point. Daniel became obsessed after that. He searched for updates constantly. Eventually, police released additional information asking for witnesses. The victim's first name was Michael. M. Daniel actually contacted investigators. He didn't tell them the full story, obviously. He just claimed he might have seen the victim earlier that night. The detective asked whether Michael had entered his vehicle. Daniel hesitated, then said no. The detective apparently responded, "That's strange." Daniel asked why. The detective told him a witness claimed Michael had been seen approaching a rideshare vehicle moments before the collision. But no matching trip had ever been found. Daniel stopped driving nights soon after. But the story still wasn't over. About 6 months later, he got another airport request around 1 a.m. after briefly returning to rideshare work. This time, the pickup was completely normal. Young guy. Headphones. Luggage. Nothing strange. Daniel loaded the passenger's bags into the trunk. The passenger opened the rear door, then suddenly paused. Was somebody already sitting back there? Daniel looked. Empty seat. No. The passenger frowned. I swear I thought somebody was in your car. Daniel laughed it off. But according to him, the rest of the ride felt wrong. Halfway to the airport, he glanced at the rearview mirror. For just a second, reflected in the dark rear window behind the passenger, he thought he saw another shape sitting beside him. Gray hood. Then headlights passed and the reflection disappeared. Daniel told me he finally quit rideshare entirely after one last thing happened. A few weeks before contacting me, he had been cleaning old files from his phone. He found a screenshot from the gas station night. Originally, he had saved it because it showed the missing trip. But when he zoomed in, he noticed something in the image background. The screenshot had accidentally captured the reflection from his windshield. You could faintly see the back seat. And sitting behind the driver's seat was a dark figure, head lowered, wearing what looked like a hooded sweatshirt. Daniel attached the screenshot to the email. The image quality was terrible. Honestly, it could have been shadows. But after staring at it for a while, I understood why it bothered him. Because once you noticed the shape, it became impossible not to see it. I asked Daniel if he still had the car. He said no. He sold it last year. I asked whether anything strange ever happened again. He responded with one final message. Not directly. But every once in a while, usually late at night, I still check my rearview mirror expecting to see somebody there. And sometimes for a second, I think I do. Daniel told me he tried ignoring the entire thing after that. For a while, it actually worked. He stopped taking late-night pickups downtown and mostly stuck to airport runs and wealthier neighborhoods where passengers were predictable. Business travelers, nurses, college kids coming back from bars, normal people. The problem was that once something gets into your head during night driving, you start noticing things you normally wouldn't. Every passenger movement, every reflection, every pause in conversation. Daniel said driving at night already feels strangely disconnected from real life after enough hours. You spend entire nights surrounded by strangers who enter your car, tell you personal things, then disappear forever. After the incident with the gray hoodie, that feeling got worse. He started checking the rearview mirror constantly, especially when passengers sat directly behind him. He said there were moments where he'd briefly think someone else was sitting back there too. Not clearly. More like the suggestion of another person in peripheral vision. A dark shape beside the actual passenger. Every time he turned fully, nothing was there. One night around February, he picked up 2 women from a downtown hotel around 1:30 a.m. The ride itself was normal. They were drunk but friendly, talking loudly about some wedding they had attended. About halfway through the ride, one of the women suddenly stopped talking. Daniel noticed her staring toward the empty seat beside her friend. Then she leaned forward slightly and asked, "Hey, who's your other passenger?" Daniel laughed automatically. "What?" "The guy sitting back there." Daniel felt cold immediately. The other woman looked confused. "There's nobody else back here." The first woman kept staring toward the corner of the back seat. For several seconds, she didn't say anything. Then she quietly said, "Never mind." The rest of the ride was silent. When they got out, the woman who had asked the question looked genuinely disturbed. Before shutting the door, she asked, "Has somebody died in this car before?" Daniel didn't answer. He drove away immediately. After that, things apparently escalated fast. He stopped sleeping properly. Not because he thought the passenger was haunting him or anything dramatic like that. What bothered him was uncertainty. The human brain hates incomplete things. Daniel kept replaying details, trying to force them into a logical explanation. Maybe Michael really had entered the wrong car. Maybe Daniel hallucinated parts of it from exhaustion. Maybe the screenshot only looked human because his brain wanted it to. But then there were details he couldn't explain, like the detective mentioning witnesses saw Michael approach a rideshare vehicle, or the fact the passenger knew his name, or the empty roads. That part especially bothered him. Daniel said the roads that night didn't feel physically normal, not abandoned. Paused. Like the city itself had briefly stopped functioning correctly. Around March, Daniel made a mistake. He started searching online for similar stories. And apparently, there were more than he expected. Forum posts from rideshare drivers describing passengers disappearing during stops. People claiming they picked up riders later discovered to be dead. Stories about missing trips that never appeared in ride history. Most were obviously fake, but a few sounded disturbingly sincere. One driver described dropping off a silent woman at a burned-down address. Another claimed his passenger vanished after he passed through a tunnel. Daniel became obsessed with reading them at night. Then one post caught his attention. The driver described seeing the same passenger repeatedly at intersections weeks after the incident, always standing still, always watching traffic. Daniel immediately contacted the poster privately. The man responded the next day. According to him, the sighting stopped only after he quit driving entirely. But before blocking Daniel, the driver sent one final message. They don't know they're dead at first. Daniel told me that sentence bothered him more than anything else, not because he believed it, because some part of him suddenly wondered what Michael had actually experienced inside the car. If the story was real, had he known something was wrong? Had he understood why the roads felt empty? Or had he simply believed he was taking a normal ride home? A few weeks later, Daniel had another experience that finally pushed him close to quitting permanently. He picked up a man from the airport around 4 a.m., middle-aged, business suit, completely ordinary. About 10 minutes into the drive, the passenger casually asked, "How long has that guy been in your back seat?" Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What guy?" The passenger looked confused. "The guy behind you." Daniel checked the mirror instantly. Empty. When he looked back, the passenger was staring at him strangely now. "You okay?" Daniel forced himself to laugh. "Yeah. Thought you were serious." "I was." Neither of them spoke again for the rest of the trip. Daniel said that was the first time he genuinely considered the possibility that something external was happening, because the passenger had sounded completely sincere. Not joking, not drunk, not nervous, matter of fact. Like mentioning bad weather. After that ride, Daniel pulled into a parking lot and sat there for almost 20 minutes unable to calm down. Then he did something he hadn't done before. He checked the backseat camera footage. His car had a small interior dashcam facing both front and rear seats. He normally only reviewed footage after accidents or difficult passengers. The recording from that ride looked normal at first. The businessman sat alone in the back seat. No second passenger. No strange reflections. Nothing. Then Daniel noticed something subtle. Throughout the ride, the businessman kept unconsciously leaning away from the empty seat beside him, as if making room for someone. Daniel replayed the footage repeatedly. The movement was unmistakable once he saw it. At one point, the businessman even briefly lifted his arms slightly like someone had shifted beside him. That footage apparently terrified Daniel more than anything else so far, because it suggested the passenger truly believed another person was there, and Daniel could see the exact moment he himself had asked the question. "How long has that guy been in your back seat?" Daniel told me he nearly deleted the footage immediately. Instead, he saved it to a hard drive he no longer keeps connected to anything. By April, he had reduced driving to weekends only. But one final incident ended everything. It happened during another airport pickup just before sunrise. The passenger this time was a young woman traveling alone. Quiet, polite, normal. Daniel loaded her luggage and started driving toward Scottsdale. About 15 minutes into the ride, she suddenly asked, "Can you stop looking behind you?" Daniel realized he'd been checking the mirror constantly again. "Sorry." "Habit." The woman hesitated, then quietly said, "I just don't like the way he looks at me." Daniel said his entire body went numb. He slowly asked, "Who?" "The man sitting behind you." Daniel nearly swerved. According to him, The woman immediately noticed his reaction and became frightened herself. "What? You can't see him?" Daniel pulled over so hard the tires hit the curb. Both of them turned toward the back seat. Empty. The woman's expression changed instantly. Not confusion. Horror. Because according to Daniel, she didn't react like somebody realizing a joke had gone too far. She reacted like somebody seeing a person disappear. The woman whispered, "He was just there." Daniel asked her what the man looked like. She described a gray hoodie. Then she started crying. Not screaming, not hysterical. Just quietly crying while staring into the back seat. Daniel ended the ride immediately. He refunded the trip manually and drove home shaking. That morning, he removed the rideshare stickers from his windshield. He never drove again. I asked him why he waited so long to send the story to anyone. He told me he didn't want attention. He just wanted somebody else to know. Then he mentioned one last detail he had never included online. Apparently, during his final week driving, he eventually searched Michael's obituary. There was a photo attached. Same gray hoodie. Same exhausted expression. But something in the background caught Daniel's attention. Michael's obituary photo had been taken inside a car, and barely visible in the reflection of the rear passenger window was another person sitting beside him. A dark figure facing forward. Daniel said he stared at that image for nearly an hour, then closed the page and never opened it again. Before ending the email, Daniel wrote one final thing. "Sometimes I still wake up around 30,000 without knowing why. And for a few seconds after opening my eyes, I always have the exact same feeling. Like there's somebody sitting quietly in the room waiting for me to start driving again." Now, move to second story. Last winter, somebody emailed me a story after hearing one of my subway horror videos. The email itself was short, just one sentence. You ever notice how certain people on trains don't seem real? Normally, I ignore messages like that because most submissions immediately sound exaggerated. But this guy followed up 2 days later with several pages of details that honestly bothered me more the longer I read them. Not because the story sounded impossible, because it sounded familiar. The man said his name was Aaron, 26 years old. Worked overnight IT support for a hospital network in Chicago. According to him, everything happened during late 2022 while he was commuting home after night shifts. And before getting into the actual story, he explained something that anybody who regularly uses public transportation late at night probably understands immediately. After enough time, you stop seeing passengers as individuals. They become patterns. The same exhausted nurse asleep against the window every Thursday. The same homeless guy carrying grocery bags full of cans. The same college students getting on after bar close. The same conductors. You stop consciously noticing them. Your brain just files them away as part of the route. Aaron said that's exactly why the woman first stood out. Not because she looked creepy, actually the opposite. She looked completely normal. Dark coat. Dark hair. Maybe early 30s. No strange makeup. No unsettling smile. Nothing dramatic. The strange part was consistency. She was always there. Always in the last train car. Always sitting alone near the rear doors. Always facing forward with her hands folded quietly in her lap. Aaron first noticed her sometime in October. At first he assumed they simply worked similar schedules. But over time, the repetition became impossible to ignore. Same train. Same car. Same seat. Every single night. And according to Aaron, she never once used the phone. Never read anything. Never listened to music. Never looked around. She just sat there motionless during the entire ride. One night, he boarded through the rear doors because the front of the platform was crowded. The woman was already sitting there. The train car itself was half full, but nobody sat near her. Not intentionally. People would step inside, glance around briefly, then choose different seats farther away. Aaron didn't even realize it consciously at first. It was like people avoided her automatically without understanding why. That night, the train lights flickered while passing through a tunnel. Everybody reacted. Passengers looked up, checked phones, shifted nervously. The woman didn't move at all. Aaron started watching her occasionally after that, not obsessively, just casually. And the more he paid attention, the stranger it became. He could never remember seeing her enter the train or leave. She was simply there, like part of the train itself. Then one Friday night, something happened that changed the way he thought about all of it. The weather was terrible that night. Cold rain, heavy wind. The platforms were mostly empty. Aaron boarded around 12:40 a.m. after finishing a hospital shift. The woman was already sitting in her usual place. There were maybe 7 other passengers in the car. An older man asleep near the center. 2 teenagers in restaurant uniforms. A woman carrying grocery bags. A couple quietly arguing under their breath. Aaron sat near the middle doors and put in headphones. About 15 minutes into the ride, the train suddenly slowed between stations. Then stopped completely. The lights dimmed. Not enough to go dark. Just enough that the entire car suddenly felt colder. The intercom crackled. No announcement came. The train sat motionless inside the tunnel. Nobody likes that feeling. Even if delays are normal, something about being trapped underground in a dark tunnel immediately changes the atmosphere. Passengers started checking phones. Looking around, sighing impatiently, Aaron glanced toward the woman, still motionless. Then he noticed something subtle. Everybody else in the car had unconsciously shifted farther away from her. The teenagers had moved seats. The grocery woman now stood near different doors. Even the arguing couple had quietly relocated farther down the car. Nobody was within several rows of the woman anymore. Aaron suddenly became aware of how isolated she looked, sitting there alone beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. Then the older man across from Aaron leaned slightly toward him. Quietly. "Don't look at her when the train starts moving again." Aaron thought he was joking. "What?" The older man kept staring straight ahead. "Just don't." Before Aaron could respond, the lights brightened again. The train jerked forward. Everyone relaxed slightly. Aaron tried ignoring the comment, but obviously now he couldn't stop thinking about it. The train picked up speed through the tunnel, and Aaron looked. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The woman sat facing forward exactly as before. Then he noticed the windows. The dark tunnel outside reflected the train interior back like a mirror. Every passenger reflection moved naturally with the vibrations and flickering lights, except hers. Her reflection remained perfectly still. The real woman slowly turned her head toward Aaron. But the reflection continued facing forward. Aaron felt his stomach tighten immediately. He blinked hard and looked again. Now, both reflection and body matched normally. The woman stared at him for maybe 2 seconds, then turned forward again. Aaron told himself exhaustion was making him misinterpret things. That had to be it. Hospital shifts had destroyed his sleep schedule for months. Still, he got off 3 stops early that night just to avoid staying in the same car. The next week, he avoided the last car entirely. Problem solved. At least temporarily. Then one night, around 1 a.m., he boarded near the center of the train instead. And halfway through the ride, he looked through the connecting doors between train cars. The woman was sitting in the last car again. Same seat, facing forward. Aaron immediately felt uncomfortable. Not because of anything supernatural. Because somehow seeing her there, when he had intentionally changed cars, made her feel aware of him now. Like whatever routine existed before had changed. A few nights later, something else happened. Aaron boarded late after missing his normal train. Only 2 other passengers were in the last car. A homeless man asleep near the doors. And the woman. As Aaron sat down, the homeless man suddenly woke up. Not gradually. Instantly. Like from a nightmare. He looked directly toward the woman. Then immediately stood and stumbled into the next train car without saying a word. Aaron watched him leave. The woman never reacted. That was apparently the moment Aaron began genuinely dreading seeing her. Not because he thought she was a ghost or anything ridiculous. He just couldn't shake the feeling that something about her presence affected people. Subtly, like an atmosphere. Around November, Aaron started noticing another detail. Whenever the woman was on the train, the rides felt quieter. Not literally silent, just wrong somehow. Passengers spoke less. People avoided eye contact. Nobody laughed loudly. The entire car felt tense without explanation. Then came the incident Aaron claimed he still can't rationally explain. It happened during the final train of the night on a Tuesday. The train was crowded at first, but gradually emptied over several stops. Eventually, only Aaron, the woman, and another passenger remained. A teenage boy wearing headphones. The boy was sitting near the rear doors scrolling on his phone. At one station, the train stopped longer than usual. The boy suddenly looked up toward the woman, then slowly removed one headphone. Aaron watched the boy stare for several seconds. Finally, the boy stood and moved closer to Aaron. Quietly, he asked, "Do you know her?" Aaron said no. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "She's been staring at me since I got on." Aaron looked toward the woman. She was spacing forward normally, not even looking in their direction. The boy kept glancing nervously over his shoulder. "I swear every time I look at the window reflection, she's looking at me." Aaron felt cold hearing that because he immediately remembered the tunnel incident. The train resumed moving. Neither of them spoke again. Then, several minutes later, the boy suddenly stood up fast. Too fast. Like somebody reacting instinctively, his phone hit the floor. Aaron asked if he was okay. The boy didn't answer. He was staring toward the train window beside his seat. Aaron followed his gaze. The reflection of the woman was standing directly behind him, not sitting. Standing. But when Aaron turned physically toward her, she remained seated in her original place at the end of the car. The boy immediately ran into the next train car. Literally ran. Aaron said the sound of the connecting doors slamming shut echoed through the train. The woman never moved. Never reacted. She simply sat there beneath the flickering lights while the train rattled through darkness. Aaron got off at the next stop, even though it wasn't his station. He waited nearly 20 minutes for another train home. After that, he considered reporting her somehow. But what exactly would he say? There's a woman on the train whose reflection looks wrong sometimes. He knew how insane that sounded. So instead, he started researching strange train incidents online. At first, he mostly found urban legends, ghost trains, disappearances, fake stories. But eventually, he came across a discussion forum where subway employees shared unexplained incidents anonymously. One post caught his attention immediately. A conductor described a woman matching the exact same appearance. Dark coat. Always alone. Usually appearing in the final train car after midnight. The conductor claimed older employees referred to her as the last passenger. Aaron contacted the poster privately. The response came 2 days later. According to the employee, several conductors over the years had reported passengers panicking after sitting near the woman. But security footage never showed anything unusual. Then the conductor mentioned something that genuinely disturbed Aaron. Apparently, the woman had first been reported years earlier after a fatal tunnel incident involving a delayed midnight train. Multiple passengers died during an electrical fire underground. One victim was never conclusively identified because of severe injuries. Female. Approximately 30 years old. Dark coat. Aaron stopped taking the train for almost a week after reading that. But eventually work schedules forced him back onto the route, and the very first night he returned, the woman was there again. Same seat. Waiting. Aaron said seeing her after intentionally avoiding the train made his chest tighten immediately, like she had noticed his absence. The car was nearly empty that night. Aaron sat closer to the middle doors, trying not to look toward her. Then halfway through the ride, the train lights went out completely. Total darkness. Passengers immediately started reacting. Somebody cursed. A woman gasped. Then emergency lights switched on dimly overhead. And in that weak red lighting, Aaron accidentally looked toward the rear of the car. The woman was gone. Her seat empty. Aaron immediately scanned the car. Nowhere. Then he heard footsteps. Slow footsteps moving up the aisle behind him. Not hurried. Not aggressive. Just steady. Aaron turned. Nobody there. But the footsteps continued, closer. Passengers around him started looking confused now, too. An older woman whispered, "Who's walking?" The footsteps stopped directly behind Aaron's seat. He could actually hear breathing. Very soft. Right beside his ear. Then the normal train lights suddenly returned. Everything instantly looked normal again. Passengers blinking. Checking phones. Muttering complaints. and sitting in her original seat at the rear of the car was the woman, facing forward quietly, like she had never moved at all. Aaron got off at the next station and vomited in the trash can on the platform. He told himself he was done taking trains permanently, but 2 nights later his car broke down, and around midnight he found himself back underground waiting for the last train home again. He said that platform felt wrong immediately. Almost empty, cold air blowing through the tunnel. Only 4 other people waiting. Then he saw the woman standing at the far end of the platform for the first time ever. Not sitting, standing perfectly still near the edge, facing the tunnel. Aaron said something about seeing her outside the train itself terrified him more than anything before. Because until then she had felt attached to the last car somehow, contained. Now suddenly she wasn't. The train arrived screeching into the station. Passengers boarded normally. Aaron intentionally entered a different car near the front. As the doors closed, he looked through the windows toward the platform. The woman was still standing there. Not boarding. The train pulled away. Aaron actually felt relief for the first time in weeks. Then the man sitting across from him frowned slightly and asked, "Did your friend make it on?" Aaron looked confused. "What?" "The woman who was standing behind you," Aaron said. The second the man said that, he felt every muscle in his body lock up. He turned immediately. Nobody behind him. Just the closed train doors and dark tunnel glass reflecting the inside of the car. The man across from him looked confused by Aaron's reaction. She was standing right there. Aaron forced himself not to look around too quickly. What did she look like? The man shrugged. Dark coat. Black hair, maybe. Then he went back to his phone like the conversation meant nothing. Aaron said he spent the rest of the ride staring at the floor. Not because he was scared to see her again, because some part of him already knew she was somewhere on the train. When his station finally arrived, he exited immediately. The platform was nearly empty. He walked toward the escalator as fast as possible without actually running. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Not close, but matching his pace exactly. Aaron kept walking. The footsteps continued. He reached the escalator. The sound stopped. He looked back. Nobody there. But farther down the platform, near the tunnel entrance, he saw the woman standing perfectly still beneath one of the flickering overhead lights, watching him. Aaron left the station without looking back again. The next morning, he called off work for the first time in months. He barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he kept picturing train windows, dark reflections, stillness. That night, he decided he needed to know whether any of this was actually happening or if he was losing his mind. So he went back. Not to ride the train, to test something. Aaron arrived at the station around 11:03 p.m. with his phone camera already recording. He waited on the platform for nearly 20 minutes. Normal commuters came and went. No woman. Then finally, the last train approached. Aaron immediately walked toward the rear of the platform. And there she was, standing exactly where he'd seen her the night before. Dark coat, hands folded in front of her. Motionless. Aaron said seeing her outside the train again filled him with immediate dread. Because now she looked different somehow. Not physically, but wrong in the way mannequins sometimes feel wrong from far away. Too still. Passengers around her acted strangely. Without realizing it, they subtly gave her space. Nobody stood directly beside her. Aaron raised his phone slightly, pretending to text while recording video. The train arrived. Doors opened. Passengers boarded. The woman stepped into the last car. Aaron followed. The car was mostly empty. He intentionally sat where he could see both her and the train windows. The doors closed. The train started moving. For several minutes, nothing happened. Aaron almost began convincing himself the entire thing had spiraled out of paranoia. Then the train entered a long tunnel stretch, and the windows darkened into mirrors. Aaron looked carefully toward the woman's reflection. At first, everything appeared normal. Then the lights flickered. For less than a second, her reflection disappeared completely. Not distorted. Gone. Her physical body remained sitting there, but the window beside her reflected only the empty seat. Aaron felt panic rise immediately. Then the lights stabilized and the reflection returned. The woman slowly turned her head toward him, not sudden, not jerky, just deliberate. And for the first time ever, Aaron realized something truly horrifying. He couldn't remember seeing her blink. Not once. The train rattled deeper underground. Aaron tried focusing on recording steadily despite his hands shaking. Then the train suddenly slowed. Not a station stop, just gradual slowing inside the tunnel. Passengers looked around confused. The intercom crackled. Static. The lights dimmed again. And every single passenger in the car unconsciously looked toward the woman at the same time. Aaron described it like a room reacting to a sudden noise. Automatic. Instinctive. Nobody spoke. The train finally stopped completely. Silence filled the car. Then from somewhere farther down the train, somebody screamed. Not loudly. Briefly. Like surprise more than terror. Passengers immediately stood looking around. Aaron glanced toward the woman. Her seat was empty. He looked up instantly and saw her standing at the far end of the car near the connecting doors. Completely motionless, facing directly toward him. Aaron said the entire train suddenly felt freezing cold. One passenger near the center of the car whispered, "Was she always standing there?" Nobody answered. Then the connecting doors behind the woman slowly opened by themselves. Darkness beyond them. The tunnel lights outside flickered weakly through the windows, and for a split second Aaron saw additional figures standing in the next train car. Not moving, just silhouettes. Watching. Then the train lights came back fully. The woman was seated again, exactly where she had originally been. Passengers immediately relaxed in that strange, embarrassed way people do after momentary panic. Like everyone collectively decided not to acknowledge what had just happened. The train resumed moving. Aaron realized his phone was still recording. He kept it pointed downward now because his hands were shaking too badly. At the next station, nearly everybody exited the car. Aaron stayed seated. So did the woman. Now they were alone. The doors closed again. The train pulled away. Aaron said this was the moment he made the worst decision of his life. He stood up and walked toward her, slowly. The woman remained motionless. Aaron stopped several rows away. Up close, she looked completely ordinary. Pale, maybe. Tired, but normal. Then Aaron quietly asked, "Who are you?" For several seconds she didn't react. Then she finally spoke. And according to Aaron, her voice sounded exhausted, not threatening, not ghostly, just deeply tired. Like somebody waking from a long sleep. She said, "Did we miss the stop?" Aaron felt his stomach drop. "What?" The woman slowly looked around the nearly empty train car, confused. Not pretending. Genuinely confused. Then she quietly asked, "Why is everyone staring at me?" Aaron didn't know what to say. The train lights flickered again briefly. And suddenly, Aaron noticed something horrifying about the passengers in the next train car through the connecting windows. They were all staring directly toward him. Not the woman. Him. Completely motionless. The woman followed his gaze slowly. Then her expression changed for the first time. Fear. Real fear. She whispered, "Oh no." The train suddenly stopped again. Hard. The lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the car. Aaron heard movement immediately. Not from the woman. From outside the train. Footsteps in the tunnel. Dozens of them. Shuffling along both sides of the train. Passengers in nearby cars started screaming now. The emergency lights flickered weak red overhead. Aaron looked toward the windows. Shapes were standing outside in the tunnel darkness. Human figures. Motionless. Watching the train. Then Aaron heard the woman speaking quietly beside him. Not to him. To herself. "They're still looking for the way out." The footsteps outside multiplied. More figures emerging from darkness. Some standing too still. Some moving strangely slow. All facing the train. Aaron backed away instinctively. The woman looked up at him. And for the first time since he'd seen her, she looked completely human. Terrified. She whispered, "You shouldn't be here this late." Then every tunnel window around them suddenly filled with faces. Pale. Expressionless. Crowding against the glass from outside the train. Aaron stumbled backward. Passengers farther down the car started screaming uncontrollably now. The train lights exploded back on at full brightness. Everything vanished instantly. No faces. No figures. No woman. Her seat was empty. The train resumed moving normally toward the next station. Passengers looked shaken but strangely quiet, like people waking from the same nightmare. Aaron stood frozen until the train finally reached the station. The doors opened. He stepped onto the platform, then immediately checked his phone recording. The video showed most of the ride normally. Passengers, train lights, tunnel reflections. But during the final tunnel stop, the footage became distorted with heavy static. The audio still worked, though. And underneath the static, dozens of overlapping voices could be heard whispering something repeatedly. Aaron boosted the audio later at home. After hours of listening, he finally understood the phrase. Last stop. Over and over. Last stop. Aaron never took the train again after that night. He quit the hospital job 2 months later and moved out of the city entirely. But before ending the email, he included one final detail that honestly bothered me more than the entire story itself. A week after the incident, Aaron searched old subway accident records online, and he found the tunnel fire mentioned by the conductor. The article included blurry photographs taken during evacuation efforts years earlier. Most showed smoke-filled train cars and emergency workers. But one image showed a group of survivors standing on the tracks waiting to be escorted out, and near the edge of the photo, partially obscured by smoke, was a woman in a dark coat standing alone, facing the camera. While everyone else in the image appeared blurred from movement, she looked perfectly still. Aaron attached the photo to the email. The quality was terrible. Honestly, it could have been anyone. But after staring at it long enough, one detail became hard to ignore. Every person in the photo was facing toward the tunnel exit, except her. She was facing deeper into the darkness behind the train, like she was watching something approach from farther down the tunnel. Something nobody else had noticed yet.